is Nico Bermea. I'm here to tell you about the pandemic that's happening in the Mile High City. To start with, there's a cry for affordable housing. The cost of living has drastically increased, causing a modern form of gentrification, meaning that there is a wage gap victimizing lower class citizens and negatively affecting middle class individuals, which has forced Colorado natives to pack up and move elsewhere. Since there's not enough affordable housing that compensates for the wage gap and cost of living, wealthier citizens move in from out of states, bringing their jobs with them to sustain themselves, as natives are forced to move out further and further away. There's a pandemic, a modern form of gentrification occurring in the Mile High City. My position will stand alongside the Colorado natives as we struggle to manage increasing rent amounts, as there is a wage gap from our jobs that does not support the cost of living. I'm calling for affordable housing to be developed as our beautiful city continues to grow, so that the modern form of gentrification recedes. After 2 decades, I have watched my own family struggle to make ends meet, as we've had to move constantly, as I've had to grow up elsewhere in many different communities. There's been times where I've had to sleep at my cousin's aunt's house because my mom couldn't afford her own place to live. And therefore, growing up, I've had to sacrifice. There's been sacrifices that have been made every year. I've been on my own for several years now, and I've slept in parks. And as I struggle to find a place I can afford to live, the only resource I have is limited choices of student housing available, because the amount of affordable housing that is offered in Denver is no less than $1,000 a month, which is quite meager. The cost of living. In the past 2 decades, prices have risen 55.91% in Denver, based off the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics 2019. Gentrification has become an outcome. 193,000 Coloradoans moved out of the state last year. Many blamed rising house prices and the jobs that just don't pay enough, based off the Census Bureau of 2017. Affordable housing. We are millions of units short of affordable housing, and the results that are nearly half of all renters spend more than 30% of their income on rent. David Workin, National Housing Conference President and CEO. I'm calling that affordable housing is a great solution to help fight this pandemic our city is experiencing. From personal observation on the net, it is very hard to find an accommodable place to live on your own in Denver. I've had grown up here my whole life and nomadically enjoyed my college experiences. Every year or twice a year, I am forced to move elsewhere because of unforeseen circumstances, or in other words, I can no longer afford to live where I'm currently staying. Growing up, I've had to move around 9 times to different homes in an effort to find a place me and my family could afford to stay in. When I was 14, I even helped start looking for places on the internet to help find an affordable place for my parents to live, because we could no longer afford the house we were living in the past 6 years. In the past 2 decades, prices have risen 55.91% in Denver, based off the labor statistics of the U.S. Bureau. And now that I'm 20, my whole life I have realized I've been exploited to the increasing cost of living. My first year in uni, I had done a research project on a place in Denver. I'd chosen Union Station because the developing light rail was one of the first modernization efforts in the city. The light rail operated by the Regional Transportation District, now connecting counties from the north, south, east, and west, centralizing all in Denver. I've had a conversation with my former supervisor, JR, a fortnight ago, about how we should contact the RTD for marketing purposes to advertise our water park. The professional discussion had led to the turndown of my idea with his biased middle-class opinion that poor people use public transportation. Summarizing that, we would not be able to connect to the market audience we are keen to. I was shook, as if he was telling me how poor I am in front of my face without directly implying it. because I've used the RTD since grade school. Open-minded as I am, I realized he may have a point. From honestly, with the past 4 years, on average, the RTD received 100,806,114 annual riders. Many who take the RTD may not have cars or find it too expensive to commute to the neighboring county. As the Denver Post states, it takes $63,000 a year for a family to subsist. The population who can't subsist in Denver would be known or considered as the middle class. If you're not a part of the lower class, you may find it hard to understand the struggles we endure to keep a roof over our head. 193,000 Coloradoans moved out of state last year. Many blamed rising housing prices and jobs that just don't pay enough, based off the U.S. Census Bureau of 2017. If so many individuals are struggling to keep up with the cost of living, therefore forced to move out, the results of the U.S. Bureau Census should be taken seriously. The cost of living has drastically increased, causing a modern form of gentrification, meaning that there's a wage gap victimizing lower class citizens. That has forced Colorado natives to leave and move elsewhere because there's not enough affordable housing that compensates for the cost of living. The average household income is about $800,000 in Colorado. The median average house price is about $452,000. And the cost of living is about 14% above the national average, based off the Forbes 2019 magazine, which is a very credible resource online. What we can gather from the data is that the cost of living is about 14% above the national average. Therefore, most commonly, home price is about $452,000. Some who can afford such mortgage must be making a household income of almost $80,000. This data must represent some lower class citizens, but mostly middle class, because of the household income of an individual must be making $38.46 an hour, or two household contributors must be making $19.23 an hour. Based off of Rubino of 2019. Fellow classmate Joe Bryant moved to Littleton, Colorado 38 years ago and has spent most of the 38 years living in our colorful state, and he has this to say: "It is amazing how much houses cost out here in Colorado. The average home in my area is going for $725,000. If we didn't buy our home over 20 years ago, we wouldn't afford to be able to buy it today. By the way, we purchased our home for only $156,000, and now it's worth $699,000. We didn't have a house payment anymore, and we have no intention on selling it. It's because we just can't afford to buy a new one." This is from our fellow classmate Joe Bryant, who's lived here for about 38 years now. The pandemic of the cost of living has led to a modern form of gentrification, which has casted a cloud shadowing over Denver. If action is not taking place, we could end up in a crisis never before experienced in America. How will we handle it then? We are millions of units short of affordable housing, and the result is that nearly half of all renters spend more than 30% of their income on rent. David Dworkin, National Housing Conference President and CEO. In 2019, U.S. Congress passed an Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. This legislation is an important step towards closing the housing supply gap, but there's much more to do. Thankfully, affordable housing is a viable resource that Denver House Bill 19-1245 led to increased vendor sales taxes that require the state treasurer to credit increased sale tax to the Housing Development Grant Fund to create more affordable housing. House Bill 19-1322 will allow the state treasurer to transfer $30 million from the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund to the Housing Development Grant Fund starting in the 2020 fiscal year annually. This is very exciting news for those searching for affordable housing. I speak to you today to urge the importance of affordable housing because we must push to support our government to continue their efforts to fund affordable housing. In Denver alone, housing costs citizens more than 50% of their income to afford their home every month. So it is important to tell state legislators that Colorado families are struggling to make ends meet, and it's up to our legislators to work with Congress to listen to our cry for affordable housing. If you believe that there is not enough affordable housing, please do the least, which will mean the most, by stand up for what is right and go ahead and sign this petition. This petition will allow legislators to know, and this will be submitted through the United for a New Economy. And here I urge you to sign this petition and help fight the issue we're having where there's not enough affordable housing, so that within a decade we will be able to afford to live in our beautiful city. Thank you.